Huddle YouTube channel. Today we will be talking about the Washington Redskins, the number 30 ranked team in my preseason power rankings. If you want to know more about what I put into consideration when making the rankings, make sure to watch the first episode of this series where we talked about the Cincinnati Bengals, the number 32 ranked team in my preseason power rankings. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the Washington Redskins. The Redskins hired Ron Rivera this offseason after firing Jay Gruden, who had been with the Redskins for a pretty long time. Ron Rivera is a defensive-oriented coach, which I think complements the Redskins perfectly, and if they do have success this year, it will be because of their defense. Now that we've talked about Ron Rivera and the coaching staff, let's move on to the players. At quarterback, it all depends on Dwayne Haskins. The Redskins drafted Dwayne Haskins last year in the first round, and he did not have a very good rookie season. He didn't play that much to begin with, and he also dealt with, I believe, a knee injury. But in Ohio State in college, he looked like a great prospect. He had wonderful accuracy, a really good processor, and was decently athletic. There are concerns, though, with the team around him, as in Ohio State, he had one of the most talented teams in college football, and now in Washington, he probably has the least talented supporting cast around him. Behind him was Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen actually did really good in Carolina last year in the beginning of when he was playing. After he played San Francisco and down from there. But he's a solid backup. He can win you a game or so. You don't want to rely on him. And there's also Alex Smith, who's not in the graphic. Hopefully he can recover from his injury, but I still think it's unlikely he ever plays football again. Now let's move on to the running back room, which I have ranking 30th. It's led by Darius Guice, who has had a lot of injuries in his short career. He's an explosive power back. He is really good when he's on the field, but that's the issue. He's not on the field that much. A power back or a player of his caliber, when you get injured that much, you really start deteriorating. I don't know how much production he'll have for Redskins this year, considering he's just had so many knee injuries and injuries in general. Behind him is Adrian Peterson. Peterson is similar to Guice. They're both power backs. He'll get you your 3 to 4 yards on the ground, per carry, and he's just past his prime. He's just another guy in the rotation here. If you have Bryce Love, who's a speedier running back, he can make catches out of the backfield. They drafted him last year, and hopefully he gets more of an opportunity this year than he did last season. They drafted Antonio Gibson, who's kind of similar to Love, and he was drafted in the 3rd round this year. I have him ranking as the number 32 wide receiver / tight end room. Leading the way is Terry McLaurin, who probably had one of the best rookie years for a wide receiver ever. He's a wonderful route runner, really good jump ball threat, and he can be your number 1 wide receiver. I wouldn't be shocked if he develops into a number 1 caliber wide receiver in like a year or two. They have Steven Sims, who I think is a really good slot wide receiver that people need to watch out for. I would not be shocked if he had a breakout year this year, and him and McLaurin would actually be pretty interesting to watch. It'd also be good for Dwayne Haskins. They have Kelvin Harmon, who's not really that fast and can't get much separation, but he's a pretty good jump ball threat. He can make contested catches, more of a physical wide receiver. They drafted Antonio Gandy Golden in the 4th round, and he's similar to Harmon in a way. He's not that fast either, kind of slow, and more of a jump ball threat. They have Trey Quinn, who's a slot wide receiver similar to Steven Sims. He probably will be his backup. They have Cody Latimer, his depth. He might not make the team, depends how cuts go. And then they have Cam Sims, who's a solid depth. He's actually a bigger wide receiver, like 6'5", 220. But that's about it for the wide receiver room. Let's look at the tight ends, and this is what really drags down the ranking. Leading the way is Jeremy Sprinkle, who hasn't really done much in his career so far. They have Logan Thomas, converted quarterback, coming back home. Then they have Richard Rodgers, who's a slower tight end, but he's a solid blocker. And then the main guy in this tight end room is Thaddeus Moss. Thaddeus Moss, the son of Randy Moss, went to LSU, and he was part of that explosive offense that Joe Burrow led. He's not too fast, but he's a really good blocker, and he's a physical tight end. If anyone emerges from this group, I would not be shocked if it was Thaddeus Moss. He's probably the most known and best undrafted free agent from this class. This O-line isn't that great either, as I have it ranking 25th. The left side really has the most concerns, as their left tackle, who probably will be starting this year, is Jerron Christian. Christian played like 10 games last year, and he was playing everywhere, but he was much better, significantly better at left tackle. And he'll be fighting for the starting job this year, and I think he can do it. Behind him, we have Cornelius Lucas, who's a low-tier starter, went on the field, and he's a good veteran presence for this offensive line group. Left guard is where it gets really bad, as they have Wes Switzer, who wasn't very good in Atlanta, and I'd be shocked if he's even average. Then they have Wes Martin, and he was taken in the 4th round last year. He'll probably be fighting for the starting left guard job, depends on how well he can do. Chase Roulier is an average center. He's pretty good for the Redskins. They have Keith Ishmael, who they drafted in the 5th round this year, and he's a pretty good run blocker. He'll probably be fighting for a starting job in a year or two. Then they have Brandon Sheriff, right guard. That was a really good decision the Redskins made to tag him. He's the best player on the team. He's a leader. They should keep him, not do what they did with Trent Williams. They have his backup, who's decent depth. And then at right tackle, we have Morgan Moses, who was actually really good at one point. Now he's around league average. He was like a top 10 right tackle a few years ago. He's still really good now, not as good as he used to be. Then you have Shahik Charles, who needs some time to develop before he should be playing on the field. So now that we looked at the Redskins offense, let's look at the Redskins defense, which I think is a strong suit of this team. I have their inside defensive line group ranking 18th, and it is a really good group. Leading the way is Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, who they both selected and are both from Alabama. Both of them are really good against the run. Jonathan Allen is a bit better when pass rushing. And behind them, they have Matt Ioannidis, who's really underrated and has been doing really good ever since he's been in the league. He's probably one of the better power rushers in the league, and he's also good against the run. Tim Settle is a really good nose tackle for them, and Brantley, he might be able to get into the rotation. Now let's look at probably the best part of the whole team, their pass rush. They got the prize of taking Chase Young, a generational talent, with the number 2 pick. He can elevate this defense to probably a top 5 defense. Look at what Nick Bosa did to the 49ers. They went from picking number 2 overall to making the Super Bowl. I don't think this is going to happen with the Redskins, as first off, they just don't have the offense to do that. But I still think this can be a top 5 defense. Behind him, they have Ryan Kerrigan, who's a really good veteran, and he's also a really good pass rusher too. It's not like he's just there as a veteran presence. They drafted Montez Sweat in the 1st round last year, and he's a really good athlete. He's explosive, and hopefully Ron Rivera can help develop him. Then you have Ryan Anderson, who's a rotational pass rusher. He actually forced quite a bit of fumbles last year. So he's a playmaker teams need to watch out for. And let's look at the linebacker room right now. I have it ranking 26, but this is a really deep room. They have John Bostic leading the way. He's a veteran presence there. And then you got Reuben Foster. So the 49ers took him in the 1st round a few years ago, and he was good for San Francisco. But they did end up releasing him as he had off-field issues. But he can be a playmaker for Washington. He did tear his ACL though last year, but he was really good against the run. and he can be the leader of this linebacking room. They have Thomas Davis, who's a veteran player, really good tackler. Then they have Cole Holcomb, which not many people know about. But he's a name people should watch out for. Holcomb played really well last year in the time he was given, and he's a solid linebacker. We have Khalid Hudson, who they drafted. He's a really good cover linebacker. Same with Sean Dion Hamilton. He's also a good athlete. He's a little undersized, though, but he's also a good cover linebacker. Now let's look at their cornerback room, which I have ranking 25th. They got Kendall Fuller, who they traded to Kansas City for Alex Smith a year or so ago. Funny enough, he comes back and signs with them. They have Fabian Moreau, and him and Ronald Darby will be their outside corners. Both are athletic, but Darby is really inconsistent. Doesn't look like he's into it all the time. But Fabian Moreau, if he has a breakout year, that's all the Redskins really need to be like a top 10 or 5 defense. He can be the star of the secondary. Behind him, they have Jamie Mullen and Greg Stroman, who are good depth for slot corners. Now let's look at their safety room, which I also have ranked 25th. Landon Collins is a really good playmaker. He's not the best in coverage. I do think it was a bit of an overpay when they did sign him, but he's still a really good player. They have Troy Apke and Sean Davis as their free safeties. Apke didn't play really good last year at the time he was given, but I do think Sean Davis will play over him. Davis is a bit more rangy, and he's aggressive and will take probably too many risks. The Shazier Everett is decent depth. Now let's look at their schedule. I have them going 4-12, which is an improvement from last year, but not what most Redskins fans are hoping for. They host the Eagles week 1. They could steal, well, it wouldn't be stealing if it's home, but if they can get a win against Philadelphia there, that would be a really good start to the year. As then they go on the road and play Arizona and Cleveland. They could get a win in one of those 2 games, most likely Arizona. So they could potentially be 2-1. I have them going 0-3 here. I have them losing against Baltimore. I have them beating the Rams here. I think they can upset them. Then they lose to the Giants in New York, but I have them beating the Giants, so I have them splitting it 1-1. Then I have them beating the Cowboys in Week 7. I have them going on a massive losing stretch from Week 9 to 14, and that's a tough part of the year, especially Week 11 through 14. You could probably win like against the Bengals at home in Week 10, but Week 11 through 14 is like 4 or 5 games, which I don't think they can win. Then they play the Panthers and Eagles to wrap up the year. I have them beating Carolina, but losing to Philadelphia. I feel Philadelphia will be fighting for playoff seeding, so it's probably more important to them at that point. But if the Redskins can start the year off good, I feel like they can win some of those tough games. Maybe they can go in San Francisco and steal a win there. Maybe if they beat Philadelphia and Arizona, they'll be 2-2 heading into Week 5, which I have them winning. And they'll be 3-2. And then they'd be like, 5-3 heading into Week 9? If that's what happens, then they probably win a few more of the games than I'm giving them down the stretch. They could go 8-8, but that's really the best I have them going. I feel like they'll go closer to 4-12. But if this team is able to put it together quickly to begin the year, they could be a solid team. So those are my thoughts on the Washington Redskins. Let me know if you agree with the Redskins going 4-12. Comment below, like the video, and have a great day.